Harper Carroll.
Hi.
Welcome to Slay.
Thank you.
Oh, what a pleasure. I've been wanting to sit down with you for so
Aw,
long.
Lou.
Harper, we're going to start off with some really easy questions for you. What are your qualifications?
Well, I got my undergraduate and graduate degrees from Stanford in computer science and AI. And then I was actually simultaneously, while I was working on my graduate degree in computer science and AI, I was at Meta, Facebook at the time. I was there for about 4 years. I started as an intern working on newsfeed ranking, which at that time, that was like the cool AI thing, was newsfeed ranking algorithms and ranking algorithms in general. And then I came back full time, worked on integrity intelligence, which was, at that time, it was civic integrity. And then we kind of looked at all harms across the site. So trying to prevent things like child exploitation imagery. I was doing that for a few years, working on building machine learning algorithms for that. And then I worked on augmented reality and emotional well-being suite of products. And then I decided to leave for a startup. It was a GPU environment startup, so helping engineers access GPUs, which are the machines, the chips that are used to train AI models, to be able to access those chips easily through like their laptops. And at that time, it was me, when I joined, it was me, one other founding engineer, and then the two founders. And the other founding engineer left after a few months. And then, so it was the three of us, me and the two founders, and we had a great time and working all the time. Anyway, that was ultimately acquired by NVIDIA. And that was where I started my, AI education work. Was at that company. So
What would you say a computer scientist does on a daily basis?
oh gosh, it depends on what kind of computer scientist you are.
What about you?
Well, now I'm an educator, but back in the day I was developing machine learning algorithms for like looking at like what's the harm, how do we craft some kind of algorithm to help mitigate that harm. Or you could be developing software, working on front end or back end or like data systems. There's a lot you could do, but for me, it was basically building these machine learning systems and then scaling them. And the team that I was on for integrity intelligence at Meta, that was kind of a research team. So that was really cool. That was less about building something that was viewable to users and more like analyzing things on the back end and trying out different products. Anyway, it was cool, but it really depends. It's so broad what you could be doing as a software engineer or as a computer scientist.
Harper, what's AI?
AI. So artificial intelligence is the simulated intelligence of a machine. So that could encapsulate things like if you say hi and you hard code, you tell the computer, given the input hi, respond hi. Otherwise, say, I'm sorry, say something else. Okay, so it's like an if then. If you say hi to the machine and it says hi back, you might think for a moment that it's intelligent. So that's AI. However, machine learning is a more intelligent form of artificial intelligence where you're learning, the machine is learning from data. So rather than having to say, for example, hard code everything, if hi, then say hi or hello. If what's up, say not much, you're able to just have it figure out from massive amounts of, say, chat transcripts, what to say across a probability distribution. So sometimes it might say, what's up? Sometimes it might say, how's it going? So it's able to learn itself. So that's where you might hear people mentioning machine learning is the people who have been in AI for a long time. It's kind of shifting now, but back in the day, if you worked in AI, you would say you worked in machine learning because everyone knew that that was like the more hardcore version of AI. That was like the legit version of AI.
Why does the average person need to take the time to understand what AI is and how it works? Like what's at stake for Jane Doe who lives up the street?
Well, it's completely going to change every industry, I think, for the better. And I also think AI is so much more than just these large language models, or generative systems like ChatGPT or image generation models. AI is really an optimizer. So given data, it's able to find these optimizations. This kind of technology can be applied to basically any problem, anything that has data. you can draw these incredible insights. And then also with large language models, we're seeing something called emergent behavior, which we should talk about at some point. But as a result of this thing called emergent behavior, we're going to get insights across tons of different types of fields, because this machine is suddenly able to synthesize like expert level data of so many different types of domains. Whereas like before, I like to give this example of a polymath. So in history, there have been a few known polymaths. So
what's a polymath?
So a polymath is someone who is an expert at more than one domain. So for example, like Nikola Tesla, and there haven't been many of them because most people, if they're an expert at one. But if you're able to be an expert at two or more, you're a polymath. And those people tend to have tremendous insights and contribute to society in profound ways. AI can be a polymath at thousands of different disciplines.
Wow.
Right. And it's because it's able to synthesize data from it, like expert level data from every discipline.
That's
and then
nuts.
it's able to draw these incredible correlations between these and understand and draw insights that we can't even fathom, or we don't see the ties, between these different fields, but AI can find that tie, the underlying, unification across fields. And so we can expect if we, someone like Nikola Tesla caused such tremendous advancements because of his ability to, synthesize across fields, we can expect that AI is going to allow us to have just tremendous advancements.
Does that exist already? Are there any fields where AI has already done that for us?
So what emergent behavior is when a model acts in a different way than it was trained to act. So it has some kind of behavior or capability at test time, at inference time, which is when the model is done training. So you might have heard the term inference. That's when the model is no longer training and it's deployed, it's out in the real world. So when you talk to it or you send it an input and it gives you an output, that's called inference. Emergent behavior has been seen in other types of AI models, but in large language models, which are like ChatGPT and things that you might use of that sort, it's relatively new. And an example of emergent behavior is like drawing novel insights across fields, right? Because obviously those insights weren't in the training data because there isn't that polymath who has that insight and then puts it in the training data. It's the AI being able to, like in its brain, understand across fields. So that's an example of this mystifying emergent behavior.
How is AI changing industries? Give me an example.
Let's look at cancer research. So one of the greatest advancements recently in cancer research is immunotherapy. Okay. And there is a type of cancer called glioblastoma that is a brain cancer, and it's tumors in your brain. And if you're diagnosed with glioblastoma, you have about a 10% chance of surviving over past 5 years.
Wow.
It's the most deadly form of brain cancer. And the issue with glioblastoma is that immunotherapy, which as I mentioned is a new breakthrough, relatively new breakthrough, does not work for glioblastoma because the immune cells that are carried in the blood with immunotherapy don't get past the blood-brain barrier. So your brain tumors are not actually, the blood doesn't go through those because there's this blood-brain barrier. And so what AI was able to do was it's able to like find cells that are cancer cells and find these cells that then transform into dendritic cells, so cancer fighting cells. So I guess my guess is that they had witnessed this kind of behavior in a certain amount of cells, but they didn't know like why do those cells do this? And they were able to train an AI model that figured out why those cells do that thing. And then they were able to use that as a treatment where the cells actually become cancer fighting cells. This cancer cells become cancer fighting cells. So that's an example of AI and, transforming a field. And I think what is a key part there that people can use as a framework applying AI to other, problems that they have is that AI was able to look at data and understand the features that went into mapping input into output. So in this case, the input was a cell, and then the output was like, oh, is it a cancer cell that then can transform into a cancer fighting cell? And it's able to actually figure out what features made a cell be able to do that.
That's incredible.
Right. And our humans' brains just simply can't do that.
That's insane.
But AI can.
Could you say, therefore, that what's at stake, the average person taking the time to understand AI and its capabilities could actually save lives?
Oh, yes, definitely. I want people to apply AI to all fields. And I think it should be used in all different types of medical fields and medical research. I think that's what I'm most excited about. And so I recently made a video about AGI.
What's AGI?
Artificial General Intelligence.
Go on. How does that differ from AI?
Basically, artificial general intelligence is when it's an AI that is able to do any kind of task. Mm-hmm. And like a human, basically, like, we exist in the world and we're giving it a new task. And based on our previous history, we're able to then do a new task. AI is not there yet. Not quite there yet. Overall, AI does what we train it to do.
Got you. So there's this level of
there is this emergent behavior. Exactly. There is emergent behavior, but training agents, so AI that kind of has side effects. So AI that can then, at a most basic example is AI that can search the web or, but basically agents have side effects. Whereas, your typical large language model that you might think of when you think of AI, you just give it an input, it gives you an output, and then it's done. Mm-hmm. There's no side effect in the world.
What is a large language model?
Oh, a large language model is a model that generates text.
Got you.
Yeah. So that is a large language model. So for example, ChatGPT,
yep,
Claude, Gemini. There's a lot of Meta's Llama. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different competing ones made by these big companies.
And they're kind of forcing us to use them at the moment. I noticed I was logging into my my email account and Gemini popped up the other week and was like, hey, I'm your new buddy now and I'm your assistant. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, order me a coffee,
Did it order you a coffee?
No, I don't drink coffee.
Because that would be an example of an agent, right? That's an agent. If you tell it to order you a coffee and it can do that.
Got you.
Yeah. And so this AGI, it's hard to build a system that can you tell it to do anything and it can just kind of do it for you, kind of like a person. Uh-huh. So there's this massive rush towards AGI that we see in companies like OpenAI.
And is this the next phase of AI? Because I feel like we've been kind of hearing about this recently, this idea that we're going to be able to train AI to do whatever we want. And so therefore, that kind of simple model of giving it a bit of data and it kicking it back out. But now, Eric was talking, my husband, we were talking about this recently, about the next wave. Is it basically saying, here's my budget, go and plan my wife's 40th birthday? Is that what AGI is? Is that where it's going? Because I don't know whether I want my birthday planned by AI. I feel like the DJ would mess up. I feel like it would be a hot mess.
Well, I guess so. With AGI, it would be able to do anything because it would basically be a person, right? And you can kind of maybe give it some light training and then it could do anything. I guess people do see it as the next phase of AI. I mean, I feel like it's a bit of an arms race because whoever develops it first has an enormous advantage. Whoever can actually generate this thing that has the intelligence and capabilities of something that's like a human, but at scale there's a tremendous amount of power in that. I think there's a huge missed opportunity here because I know that AI is this optimizer, right? We see the amazing results applying it to this glioblastoma research. Mm. What if we had people who are AI informed in every single industry, all different types of medicine research, diagnostic imaging? If we applied AI to all of these fields, if we just had someone who knew how to use it in all of these fields, imagine the tremendous advancements that we would have. And so I feel like all of the attention on AGI is kind of a missed opportunity. And so one of my goals in teaching people about AIs is that they will then go into their fields and bring in these really exciting forms of AI, for example, in medical imaging, detecting cancer 5 years early. saving so many lives. There's so many ways that we can use AI for very specific problems today.
Why do you think we're not doing that?
I think it's an education thing.
So people are lacking the education. Like, what's the gap that needs to be closed?
I think people don't know how to use AI right now. They don't know, like, how would I apply it to my field,
If you were just talking to the average person who, has a normal job, what would you say the entry point to them would be? Like, what should everybody be using when it comes to AI?
Well, I think everyone at a minimum should be using something like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. I'm partial to Claude, although it has a lot of limitations. Something like Perplexity, which is basically a central hub for all different types of models. And then it also can search the web and provide references.
What should we be using it for? Like day-to-day tasks?
Yeah.
Homework?
Everything, like everything. Anything that you would kind of ask some kind of advisor on, you should use it for everything. Homework, lesson planning, writing emails, social situations,
Financial advice?
like everything. It's like having a personal assistant that knows what it's talking about.
And how are these models like tested for accuracy? So like, can we trust them to give us like real diehard expert advice? Or is there a degree of like error?
It's a great question. So there is something, and I've made a couple videos on this because it's important, called hallucinations, which is when large language models, so ChatGPT, these text generation models, out of the box, so not augmented with other abilities like searching the web, they are just text generation or word generation, technically called token generation, which are fragments of words, machines. And they operate probabilistically. So every word that they output is basically just, they were trained on text, they were trained to recognize patterns in text, and then they output text according to those patterns. They can make things up. They don't actually have concrete awareness of the truth.
Wow.
Because they're not like referencing something in their data. They don't even they can't point to anything in their data. They're just like learning word distributions and then outputting word distributions based on, n amount of words that they've received. What then is the most likely word to come next? And they don't actually, again, have any knowledge of their exact training data necessarily. So there are systems like retrieval augmented generation that allows models to then reference specific data and check its outputs. And so there are systems that search the web and give you references. There are specific, ones like I think Cite is one of them, where like with an SCITE, where it's research papers. So it will actually reference data for you. And this is something that I think everyone really should be aware of, that AI models do hallucinate. And so if you really do need to be using one, if you need to make sure that what you're getting from the model is factual, you really do need to be using one that will provide references for you that you can double check. Just because, again, another thing, for example, with Perplexity, it'll give you references like websites, and then you'll go check the reference and it's not actually correct. Like, these models aren't perfect yet.
Got you.
So you have to go yourself, check the references, but it can help you gather the data, help lead you in the right direction.
So how does an AI model get trained to be intelligent?
In the context of a large language models, there's all different types of ways you can train AI models. So let's kind of zoom into large language models. They start with massive amounts of text data. So they scrape the entire web. And what you're then training the model to do is, given you chunk this data, so you have, again, all of the text from all the internet, and then you create this kind of sliding window across the text where it's like, given this, 50 tokens before, predict the next token. And then you train it on that task. And then you say, all right, given the next 50 tokens, and then you're kind of sliding and you're training this model to just predict text. Given text before, what's the next token?
Who's doing the training?
So it happens automatically. So they set up the structure, they set up the data pipeline, they gather all the corpus data, they code systems that will then pull the data, make it look good, feed it to the model. Then the model has this system where it, makes a prediction, it gets its error, then it back propagates that learning into the weights of the model. And it's doing all this like automatically.
Who's starting that process?
Humans.
Humans are.
Yes.
So we're the catalyst.
Yes.
To kind of sifting through the information, and then we're teaching it whether it's giving us the correct response.
Exactly.
And then allowing it to kind of like move on and kind of like multiply.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we start that system. Yeah.
Wow. So we're the ones that are kind of responsible for all of this change and all of this technological advancement.
Yes.
But then when you take an AI model that's intelligent, is able to then do that for itself? Like am I right in thinking that the emergent behavior that's right, is the ability for it to keep learning without our help, or does it constantly need our help?
That's a great question. So that's another type of learning where it can be kind of learning on its own online. Mm-hmm. And that would be called online learning if it's like out in the world and people are talking to it and it's learning as it's receiving data. That is another
iRobot.
I guess. I don't know if I have to say I don't think models like ChatGPT and OpenAI, I don't think they're learning, or Gemini, I don't think they're learning as you're talking to them because it's too risky.
Okay.
Because
what are the risks?
Because the coders want to be sure and the developers want to be sure that the data being fed to the model is good data. And if you're just feeding it trash, then that would be a risk, right? Or if the model is just learning from people's behavior, that's really risky because they're actually changing the weights of the model. It's expensive to train a model. You would then deploy that to everyone else and they suddenly could have like really messed up data. I mean, think about it, right? You could have some bad actor then go say heinous things and train that to the model. So I think that they capture the conversations, they sort through them, they make sure there's nothing like bad, and then they end up using that to then continue to train the model.
So can AI models be biased?
Yes.
And how? In what ways?
So it's based on the training data. There are ways to mitigate this, but I'll give this famous example. So it used to be on Google, if you would look up nurse, you would only see like women. And if you looked up doctor, you would only see men. And that's just because it is reflecting biases in our society. And so then when it would like generate images, right, it would make only male doctors and female nurses. And so that's an example of a bias because it is just representing the underlying data. And so you would then have to kind of find ways to augment the data, add more images of female doctors, or, like there are ways to kind of manually go in and try to mitigate bias.
And who would be like doing that? Who would be going in and making sure that there was like this intervention in place to make sure that there wasn't like gender biased in AI models?
That would be something like an integrity team at a company. They would probably dedicate a team to doing that and like stress testing models and checking for bias.
So this is basically your forte, right?
Well, so that kind of thing is not my integrity, but there are lots of different types of integrity. Like I know there's the IG fairness team actually, who was started by a woman that I went to school with. She was in my freshman dorm, Christina Wadsworth. Job? She started a, shout out to Christina if you're watching this. She started IG fairness, which is like Instagram's basically mitigating bias in Instagram's algorithm.
So what are the other ethical considerations do we have to be aware of when we're using AI? Because I feel like there's a lot of skepticism around utilizing AI. I feel like, people are either, this is the greatest thing ever, like I'm saving so much time, or no, I'm completely perturbed and this is just morally wrong. So what are the things that we, the average person, need to consider ethically when we're utilizing this new technology?
I think it's just such an exciting, amazing advancement to the world. And I guess when you are deploying a model, there are some ethical considerations, right? So if your model somehow, it scrapes if you are creating a model yourself, and you are training the model on everything on the internet, and it finds some like dark portions of the internet that teaches you how to like make a bomb or something, you then ethically kind of, perhaps, who knows, there are different schools of thought on this, have have a responsibility to create guardrails.
Mm-hmm.
So limitations of them on the model, where if you ask it to teach you how to make a bomb, it's not going to do that.
Right.
And so those are the kind of ethical considerations on the side of the creators of the model.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big thing, right? If you think about the fact that anyone now can download ChatGPT, have that on their phone,
Yeah.
and have access to that information, or not anyone can type that into Google now, and I'm assuming that Gemini will jump in and pop up with the answers or somewhere along those lines. So if we're thinking about like the protection of society, like making sure that those kind of safeguards are in place, I imagine is quite a big deal.
Yes. Yeah. There are whole teams dedicated to it.
Harper, what are the top 3 things that everybody out there needs to know about AI? Like, what are the things that you know that AI can do to enhance people's lives? And you're just like, oh my gosh, I just wish everybody knew whatever it is.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is that AI is not just these large language models. I mean, everyone, when they think of AI, they think of like ChatGPT and maybe image generation models. But AI is so much more than that. It's an optimizer. So, for example, like the cancer example that we talked about, where doctors or researchers, medical researchers, were able to see this phenomenon of like, for some reason, these cells are transforming from, cancer cells to cancer fighting cells. Why is that? We have as humans wouldn't be able to figure that out, but or it might take forever, but AI can figure that out. And so I just wish people knew that it's this kind of optimizer, insight generator, given data, like figure out the features of something machine by itself. So in the case of the cancer fighting cells, it figured out what are the features of this cancer cell that make it then transform into a cancer fighting cell. And then how can we detect those features then on new cells and then find the cells that we think are going to do that. And then they tend to do that. And so I just wish people knew that. And so then they could apply it to all different types of problems that they have and use it to draw insights on their data. I think that's like the biggest one, because we are sitting on this, like, I guess, like gold mine of a potential utopia with this kinds of technology, and it's not being used because the education of how to use it and how to apply it for all different types of domains isn't being taught.
Do you feel like there's an issue with accessibility?
In the sense that like people just...
The average person, like their entry point, is it too low? Like how can we help raise the bar, and what can we be doing to make sure that everybody has the ability to be engaged with AI?
I love that. I think for me, I'm trying to just teach people about AI and how it works, and have people understand that it's not, again, just these large language models. It's so much more than that, and help people kind of dip their toes in, maybe start with a large language model, start by applying it to their work, and then become more familiar with it, use some AI tools. Like my friend is a photographer, and she told me, I'm so excited. There's this new feature that I can just, like, for example, if there's something in the background that I don't like, I can just click it and have it removed. That used to take me 4 hours last time.
Right.
And now it's this tedious work that she didn't want to do. Now it's just gone in an instant. Saves her 4 hours to do something else.
Incredible.
It's not like she's going out of business now. It's as like
she might be going into business.
Exactly. She'll be able to go photograph more people, have more clients, do things that she likes, be creative, not spend these 4 hours, half her day. Like,
imagine, how do you use AI on a daily basis? Like, if you think about all of the tasks that you do every single day, what are the ones that you're like using AI for that?
I like to have it help me kind of organize my thoughts, potentially like writing emails, making lesson plans. So for my 10 days of AI basics, I actually, to start that series, I whiteboarded like, okay, these are the main topics, 10 topics that are important. And then I did little sub bullets. And then I was like, oh no, I only have 9. And I took a picture. I was like, what's the other one that you would have me add here? And it noticed that I had missed like a gaping topic that I hadn't put in there. And then I was able to expand on my points. And then I'm able to then go in and say, oh, is this correct? Because I think one exciting thing about AI for educators is that because of model hallucinations, you do have to be wary of what you receive from the model and whether it's true. So if you're learning a new topic,
Yep.
you need to be wary. You might actually be learning something that's incorrect. But as an educator, you are then able to quickly see, like, this is true. That's not true. That doesn't make sense. That's not, like,
Yep.
And so it's really helpful as an educator for lesson plans and for laying things out in a clear way.
Because I must admit, I've used it for a number of podcast episodes. I've used it for fitness advice, and it's not always quite that accurate. And it's really interesting because, especially when it comes to like fitness at the moment, there's so much information, there's so much myth busting going on, yet there's the widely held beliefs, which are sometimes not necessarily the most accurate beliefs.
Yes.
And so you really have to know your stuff. And I think that actually, to a certain extent, AI can be this amazing optimizer in terms of speed and progress, as long as it's given that correct information. And as long as humans are still kind of taking the time to kind of really learn their craft and really be the expert.
And that's what gets me excited about these smaller models, is that you can then create a fine-tuned model. So you take maybe a base model that knows how to talk, and then you train it again on your data, your specific, expertise, and then maybe have it reference the data specifically. And then you can have this specialized model for your task, and it's smaller, it's easy to run, and you can really rely on it. Like, I think that kind of application for AI models is so exciting for me. Like, I understand why, from like a global, almost military perspective, that we need something like AGI. And I guess, it'd be amazing if we could just have it become an expert in anything.
Why
That'd
would
be cool
that
too,
be important from like a military perspective? And is AGI effectively like robotics?
So
will we just is there a point where AGI will become soldiers and we'll just send them off to war, and therefore we would never have to put another human life at risk?
you could do that with AGI. Wow. Yeah.
What else could it do?
Gosh, I don't
Could
even know.
Could it do surgery?
Yeah. But there are already AIs that can do that now. Wow. But yeah, like if you have these specialized models for certain tasks, I do see the benefit of AGI. I guess I definitely do. If you could have it become an expert in any field, like pretty quickly. But I also just think maybe we just train models like for specific tasks. But yeah.
So AI, is it really taking all of our jobs?
I want to be thoughtful here, because I have people reach out to me and say like, oh, it took my job, and so I don't want to be like, no, it's not. I think in the vast amount of cases, it will not take your job. I think it will augment your job. It'll let you do things faster, like my photographer friend who now no longer has to spend 4 hours on a tiny little thing, and then her output is so much greater now. I think that kind of thing will apply to most people, where their day-to-day tasks will shift, but they won't lose their job. They'll just be able to be more productive than they were before. I think there are some cases where jobs may be taken. Like I was getting a coffee recently, and I was talking to someone, and he was like, he works in robotics. He was like, yeah, baristas, that's probably going to be one of the, early ones to go once we have robots.
What was his reasoning behind that?
Just because a lot of coffees and things are just pretty formulaic.
If you think about it, we've had kind of coffee machines for the longest
Exactly,
time.
right.
And baristas and coffee shops have really just been about, community, haven't they?
I know, so maybe it won't go away.
Maybe we're at that point. If that's the case, if baristas, then I feel like everything's kind of, at risk.
I know. Well, I wouldn't say that necessarily. But
I used to work for a humongous coffee company.
Oh, really?
Who make great coffee machines.
Oh.
And I was actually explaining, Eric finds this really funny because he says, I've never had a proper job, but this was a proper job. And the machines are temperature controlled. So for coffee beans, they're supposed to be basically brewed at around about 37 degrees. If not, it burns the bean.
Okay.
And therefore alters the taste of the coffee.
Yeah.
And they're really prime themselves. They're a Swiss brand. They prime themselves on quality and making sure that they give the customer the best.
Yeah.
And so that was just like fascinating to me, that we were of an age whereby we were like, it's no longer just like a coffee machine. You whiz it up. Like the coffee machine is doing the expert level stuff
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah.
It was, the pour was slow, the right amount, just the right amount for an espresso.
Yeah.
If you wanted like a longie, they're called, a little bit more. So this was already like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So I can see how that can happen, but I kind of hope that the artistry,
Yes.
and the things that we appreciate as humans are what keeps certain businesses alive.
I think you're hitting something spot on. Is I think, Mark Andreessen said this recently. He was like, things made by humans have always been desired because they were made by humans. And that's not going to go away, And so even if we have places where it's an AI cafe, I'm sure there will still be cafes that have people because people want that. There is the desire. And
So
if there's demand, then there will be someone who is selling it to you.
I agree. AI, though, is at the end of art and creativity as we know it.
Oh my gosh, no.
So how does AI help us to optimize our art and creativity?
I was actually just talking to someone today, and he was telling me about how his wife used to be a natal delivery nurse or something. Like she would deliver babies, and then she had her own babies and she was just working at home. He was like, AI has unlocked this entrepreneur in her. He was like, now she's starting a school. She's starting a Montessori school. We're teaching kids AI, and it's going to be outside, and she can like run this whole fleet of like kind of workers that are really just AI. Like she's just able to do all the parts herself because she has the help of AI. And so now she's starting a school in their local community that is a Montessori school. It's outside, but it also mixes education of, for example, things like AI. And this is just this woman who was at home otherwise. And now she is, again, starting this whole school. And so it's amazing. It's unlocking these abilities for people to have this creative entrepreneurial spirit. So this is what I was going to get at that we didn't get at before with the taking jobs. What excites me the most about AI is that I think everyone in their heart has like a burning desire for something that they want to do. And maybe they haven't found it yet. Maybe it's because life has beaten them down and they're just like showing up at work every day, doing the thing that they have to do to pay the bills. But I think there is something that people love to do, or at least an endeavor that would really lighten their soul or brighten their life. For example, this woman making this school, but it was just too daunting of a task before. She couldn't make a school. Like, for her or for most people, it's like, that's crazy. That's an enormous task. But now she can. Some people may lose their jobs, that there might be a transition period and it will be uncomfortable. Again, though, I think most people that won't necessarily happen. But I think that AI will enable people who either voluntarily or involuntarily leave their jobs to be able to basically be these entrepreneurs and build something end to end that they were always excited to do, but couldn't before because it was too expensive. And, they had to hire this person and this expert in this and this expert in this and this expert in this. And, it's just amazing. We'll have so many more small companies of people who are just really passionate. I was reading somewhere that there's the prediction that we'll soon see our first single person $1 billion company.
I read about that recently online.
Yeah.
That was quite incredible.
Yeah.
And, we know that there are smaller organizations like Spotify who are run very, very lean. But I remember reading about the $1 billion unicorn.
Yeah.
That would be incredible.
Yeah.
But so far as education, you mentioned obviously this lady that's created a school. What are the implications on our children? Is AI is it just making our kids dumb?
No. Oh my gosh. No. I'm like, I saw this.
Are they just cheating on their homework?
I saw someone shared about his child who had this interaction with ChatGPT. And you know how, I mean, I don't have kids, but I've heard lots of parents tell me like, my kids just ask me these questions like, why is the sky blue? And I'm like, I don't know, Brad, like, sorry, it's blue. Kids can ask all those questions to AI and get the real answers. And they like have these conversations. I know ChatGPT, Claude doesn't have it yet, but ChatGPT, you have this voice mode where you can like turn it on and ask it a question and have this conversation. And with this, it'll speak back to you, you speak to it, it speaks back to you. And it can kind of change its words to speak to a 3-year-old. So like, hey, my 3-year-old is about to ask you a bunch of questions. Explain these concepts to him as you would to a 3-year-old. And so
that's a brilliant idea.
It enables their creativity. It's not making them dumber. They can go down any path they want. They can learn about the universe. They can learn about dinosaurs. They can learn about anything. It's right at their hands.
Harper, I'm thinking about all of the time that I'm going to get back as a mother. I'm like, I'm going to have time to do my nails. I'm going to have time to do my hair.
Totally.
Like, because if you think about how curious
Yes.
like a child's mind is, and I think that we can all kind of picture that. Why? I feel like we've all been that child as well.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
And then they're just like, I'm sorry. And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rather than letting them, you
might get to 2 or 3 questions before you lose your rag or you're just at your limit.
Yeah. Endless. And so instead of them just plopping them in front of an iPad where they're just like watching a show, this is what are they curious about? What do they want to learn? Because kids are these learning machines,
so
right?
AI is basically like really good free childcare.
Yeah, basically.
For all the mothers out there, I'm like, how does this resonate for the average woman at home? Like, what are the problems that she's having?
That would be amazing.
I mean, if we think about the amount of times, if we think about screen time and the way in which kids are engaging with screen time, if there's a way in which we can make that more educational for children.
I mean, they don't even need to have a screen. They could just have like a little pod that is a large language model, like an Echo or like Amazon, and just say, ask a question, it responds, ask a question, it responds.
Oh my gosh, hours of fun.
Or there could be a screen where it, generates an image for you, like, shows you the dinosaur that you ask about, or like,
hours and hours of fun.
Yeah.
Eric is the complete opposite to me with our parenting ideals.
Really?
He's cringing at the moment, but I'm just like, wow,
I think it's amazing.
Time back.
Totally.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
This is a really interesting one. We had a conversation in the gym today about AI. And we were like, okay, we've got Harper coming on and we're like, what are you guys fearful about? One of the things that came up was romantic relationships. Now, this was an interesting one because we obviously have a predominantly female gym.
Yeah.
And the question of like, are robotics going to replace our romantic relationships?
Yeah.
Because I felt like, me and one of the girls said, guys are fickle. Like, this could happen. We could all just end up completely just solo entrepreneurs and just solo operators. And never have to have human connection ever again, but also be getting all of our emotional, potentially even physical needs met.
I wonder if AI girlfriends are going to be more popular or boyfriends.
That's
assuming a heterosexual.
Where would you put your money? I'm thinking girlfriends because I feel like if you're like I do and your kind of like Netflix browsing history is kind of shady, that kind of already exists in certain parts of the world. Like we've seen the emergence of like, dolls and things like that already, right?
Yeah.
I don't know that there are many women out there that have like a doll as a girlfriend, but I know that there are probably a lot more weird men,
Right.
Or
but there are always going to be those people.
Yeah, they'll be the first ones. They'll be the
and I don't know if I want them procreating anyway.
I know, that's a very good point. I love that.
Honestly, like this is probably good for humanity. Honestly, yeah, like if you can weed out the people who don't actually want human connection and they're like good with an AI, then good. Like please get out of the gene pool. We need more like kind, loving people who want human connection.
That's bloody brilliant.
That's all I'll say about that.
I love it. We asked our audience on social media today whether they were scared of AI. And 53% said no, 47% said yes. I did ask what their concerns were, and 29% said like that there's a threat to creativity. 50 odd percent said a threat to connection, so human connection. And then 11% said education, and then another 11% said jobs. Are you surprised by those results?
No, I think they make sense. With education, people would realize that they're not actually something to be concerned about for a lot of them. So, for example, creativity. We just talked about how you can now imagine something that you want to make and basically build it end to end, have a $1 billion single person company, make a school yourself. Like creativity, it enables creativity. It suddenly gives you this master tool to create anything that you want. So I think once people realize that, they'll be less afraid of, the creativity impact. For relationships, I think they're actually very helpful. I have a friend who is seeing a man who has told her that he's avoidant. And I guess they've been dating for a few months. And she used to call her friends and say, like, he hasn't texted me in a week. We had a really great time last week, but he hasn't texted me. Like, what should I do? And her friends are like blind leading the blinds, like, don't talk to him ever again. Like, he's not talking to you. Or, another person's like, it's cool. And she's like, what do I do? Whereas I was like, you know what? Just try using Claude, please. And it's this 24/7 expert on attachment styles and relationships.
How did that play out?
Oh, she's obsessed. She's like, Harper, Claude has like saved my life because she can pull out her phone at any time in the middle of the night if she's stressed, and she can trust it to give her good feedback because it can build a context. Like we met, it's an ongoing conversation about their relationship and what he said and whatever. And so she's able to understand him more because she didn't understand someone who has that kind of attachment style. And usually that comes from like childhood events or whatever. And so now she's able to understand him and come at it with a lot more compassion, and passion maybe, but compassion and be able to help their relationship move forward, And so I think it will really help people. I know a long time ago, Wojciech Zaremba, who's one of the co-founders of OpenAI, he tweeted, ChatGPT has really helped me and my fiance because in fights, we can talk to ChatGPT and it's kind of like a marriage counselor and it can help us see the other person's side. It's amazing, I have to say. And people have DM'd me from all over the world saying, I use AI models for emotional support. And I think it really is an amazing tool, like for your relationships, for emotional support. And I do not think it will replace people. It won't. We still crave human connection. We crave seeing faces. There's something in our brain that craves faces. So no, it's not going to replace it, but it is a tremendous comfort and help in romantic relationships and otherwise.
I love it. How's AI going to have an impact on women's health? So, this is obviously a huge, huge passion of mine. And so if we're thinking about the way that we train models, whether they be smaller models or larger models, and if we know that we have if we know that training, fitness has always kind of depended on a lot of male data sets, and also all of the information and all of the research that we're utilizing is often really gender biased,
right?
Then surely don't we have the ability now with AI to move the needle forward where women's health is concerned?
Oh yeah.
And how do we go about doing that? Like, how can we have that impact? Like, where are we going to see the biggest impact when it comes to women's health?
AI enables massive amounts of data to be collected in a very short time. So in the past, one of the issues we have with women's health is that the research that was done was all on men, as you know. And so we have very limited data on women's health. We can quickly augment that or change that by, say, if we have women who wear like trackers. So say like every woman suddenly, or many women in, for example, the United States wore some kind of many types of health trackers. Okay. So we checked like blood pressure and heart rate and, hormone levels, and just suddenly had all this biometric data. And then you were able to see health outcomes. So you have this time series of biometric data of all these stats of all different types of things, hormones, what have you. And then over time, you see someone ends up staying very healthy for all their life, or you see someone ends up getting this disease or that disease. And you're able to then draw these insights because you have this massive amount of data. You're able to then see, remember we talked about how AI is able to find the features for you. So in the case of the cancer cell that transformed, we're like, why did that cancer cell transform? In the same way, why did that person transform from relatively healthy to not healthy? It's able to find the features that made it do that and then make some of those features human interpretable. So then we can then go back and say, this kind of behavior caused that, or we noticed that this hormone dropped at this point and that, we saw that across all of the people who ended up having this issue, and it's amazing what we can do. And we can just start now, like just put on the trackers, like let's get going. We can quickly have massive amounts of data to help women's health and men's health.
So what can women be doing right now to positively impact their health? Like what can they be doing to move the needle forward for themselves?
Well, I think getting some of these health trackers, there are all different types. They will be gradually, I'm sure, adding AI to their systems, like Aura, I think, is doing that.
So what happens if women aren't playing a role in the creation of AI models?
It's interesting you say that. I think if we're talking in the context of large language models, so these like chatbot models, I think if only men are developing these systems that end up, framing our world and guiding decisions and doing all these things, then that's what you're going to have. I mean, I naturally would want then to have a balance, right? Both. I'm not saying men are bad, but we also want the female perspective as well. I think we are so complementary to each other, but we need both of us, men and women. And so I think to have the machine that's making the decisions potentially only be male or trained on data that's only men, you're missing out on the other half and the insights that women have. And so, yeah, I think that's important. At Anthropic, they do a lot of work on this, and there's the main like ethicist or Claude creator. She's a woman.
Harper Carroll, what did you come to say?
Again, I think my main mission with all of this is educating people so that they can understand how AI is going to really better their lives and the doors that it opens and the opportunities it presents. And then so they can make informed decisions about AI and then use it to create what their heart desires, So yeah, I think AI can really bring in a utopia for us. And so I want people to understand it and use it and then see that for themselves and kind of start making those changes in their lives right now. Because life is just really a lot better with AI in it, honestly. For the people I know who use it, they all say the same thing, like they could never go back. And it's a positive thing. I think it's a really beautiful thing for humanity. I think we are going to look back and see that it's a really, really beautiful thing for us.
Harper, what have you got coming up, and what do we need to know about? Where can we see more of you?
You can follow me on my Instagram. It's Harper Carroll AI, 2 R's, 2 L's, and Carroll. And I'm also I have a YouTube as well where I do longer form education videos, and I'm starting a podcast, which I'm very excited about. So follow my Instagram, my YouTube to get updates on that. I'm also on TikTok and some other platforms and X. It's Harper S. Carroll on X. It's not Harper Carroll AI. But yeah, I'm really excited about the podcast.
Harper, that's a great note to end on. I really genuinely believe that you are here to make an impact, a bigger impact and a wider impact on the women that inhabit this whole planet. So thank you for joining us on the Slay podcast. What an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. Thank you.
That concludes this episode of Slay. Stay tuned for more empowering discussions on female health, fitness, and life. You can follow me at Louise Hazel on social media, and you can follow Harper at Harper Carroll AI. You can also follow the Slay Gym at Slay Athletic Club, and don't forget to subscribe to the Slay podcast if you haven't done so already on YouTube, and leave us a comment. You can also get fit at home using the Slay app. Hit the link in my bio to download it now for free from the App Store and join our online community.